A cat suddenly jumped into the boss's lap during the video conference. Everyone's eyes collectively shifted to my screen, because a minute ago, this exact same cat had been sound asleep in my camera frame. I opened my mouth desperate to explain. Alaric's long fingers casually massaged the back of the cat's neck. His dark, intensely intimidating eyes stared straight into the camera. His voice low and gravelly. Be a good boy. Go find your mommy. Wanted the ground to swallow me whole. Moving in with my boss, Alaric was a complete accident. I was just a newly hired, full-time assistant in his company's project department, the kind of nobody, whose name wasn't even worth taking up space in his brain. But I had a side hustle, pet sitting. It was a regular weekend. I took a job on the app, held my carrier to the client's place, and had just finished giving the cat a bath. When the front door clicked open behind me, I turned around and locked eyes with Alaric, who had just returned from a business trip. My entire body went rigid. All the apartments in the city, I had to be pet sitting for the CEO. I forced myself to keep breathing. He doesn't know me. He doesn't remember me. I chanted in my head. I dropped my gaze, pretending to be extremely busy blow-drying the cat. Second I flipped off the dryer, Alaric stepped right beside me. He was wearing a dark silk shirt with the top 2 buttons undone, faintly outlining the firm lines of his chest. His towering frame closed in on me, carrying a heavy, intimidating presence. The scent of cedar, mixed with high-end custom cologne, instantly wrapped around me. I didn't have the luxury of admiring the view. I quickly tilted my head, letting my hair fall forward to hide my face. Was it you the last few times too? He asked. I gave a stiff nod. My nails dug into my palms. I had been here multiple times, and never realized it was the boss's penthouse. You do good work, he stated. Brief assessment before dropping the bomb. Are you open to a long-term arrangement? Excuse me, this cat is difficult to handle. If it weren't, he paused, cutting himself off. Forget it. Simply put, I need someone to take care of him full-time, preferably a live-in situation. Name your price. Are you in my brain? Short circuit like a living nanny? A low chuckle rumbled in his chest. If you want to frame it that way, sure. I bit my lip, but I already have a job. I know you do, he said smoothly. You're Connor's assistant in the project department, aren't you? I remember you, Josie. My lungs forgot how to work. Hearing my name drop from his lips hit me like a physical blow. The absolute shock left my limbs entirely numb. He continued, go to the office during the day as usual, and stay here at night to take care of the cat. It won't interfere with your schedule. But I stumbled, desperate for an out. Alaric stepped slightly closer, his tone turning dangerously casual. Correct me if I'm wrong, but company policy strictly forbids moonlighting, doesn't it? Reality slapped me in the face. The whole reason I dreaded running into him was that I couldn't afford to lose my newly permanent position. It was half threat, half seduction. Stay and take care of him, and I'll pretend I never saw you on that app. I had zero leverage. I nodded, and just like that, I moved in with Alaric, or rather with his cat, Waffles. His cat's name was Waffles. According to Alaric, Waffles was arrogant, completely antisocial, a midnight howler and a vicious scratcher. He pressed down hard on that last word. Clearly, there was some deep-seated resentment there. I bit the inside of my cheek to stop myself from laughing. It reminded me of a rumor going around the office. During my early internship, for a while, Alaric had been coming in with suspicious scratches on his neck and forearms. Guy like him, powerful, perpetually stern and unapproachable, suddenly sporting what looks like wild love marks. The entire office was losing their minds. In private group chats, people swore. His secret girlfriend was aggressively marking her territory, sending a physical warning to everyone else to back off. Others were just amazed he had the stamina to go at it all night, and still crush meetings until midnight. The gossip had been relentless. Turns out the ruthless CEO was just losing turf wars to a cat. I could fully compose my face. Alaric spoke. I have a video conference tonight. Keep him out of my way. I nodded, accepting the sacred mission. I figured it would be an easy gig. But right before his meeting kicked off, my mentor Connor texted me. Log into this room at 8. Fought hard to get you permission to shadow pay attention. I stared at the meeting ID on my phone, then at the peacefully sleeping Waffles on the rug. My stomach dropped. Of course, my two worlds were going to violently collide on day one. I piped back a quick got it, dragged my laptop to the absolute farthest corner of the room from Waffles and joined the call. The host announced the start of the meeting. The very next second, a groggy Waffle strutted straight into my camera frame. The host abruptly stopped talking. Half a dozen upper management executives looked up at their screens. Every single pair of eyes zeroed in on the cat. Waffle stopped dead center in the frame, completely unbothered by the sudden heavy attention. He flopped onto his belly with a soft thud and went right back to sleep. Panic spiked in my chest. I'm so sorry. Let me just move him. Before I could even push my chair back, Alaric's voice, Cut through the speakers. It's fine. Let him sleep. When the CEO speaks, people listen. The executives quickly chimed in with awkward praises about how cute he was, and the meeting moved on. For the first 10 minutes, my eyes were glued to Waffles. Luckily, he just slept. My shoulders slowly dropped from my ears, and I started actually listening to the meeting. Connor's turn to present came up suddenly. Mid-sentence, he went completely silent. I frowned and glanced at the screen. Out of nowhere, there was a cat in Alaric video feed, resting perfectly comfortably right against his chest. Absolute silence gripped the call. Then in perfect unison, everyone's eyes shifted back to my square. My breath hitched. I slowly turned my head toward the corner of my room. The spot where Waffles had been sleeping was empty. He was gone. He had wandered straight into Alaric's office. My brain scrambled frantically, trying to string together words to explain this massive, career-ending misunderstanding. The cat in Alaric's arms shifted restlessly and let out 2 loud meows. My heart jammed into my throat, just like he always did. Alaric's large hand came down to gently pat the cat's rear. His voice was low and steady through the speakers. Be a good boy. Go find your mommy. Just bury me now. Dead silence smothered the call. No one spoke, but the collective misunderstanding was deafening. 2 department heads who used to make my life hell were now staring at my screen with wide apologetic eyes. I stared a hole into my keyboard. There was no coming back from this. Those dirty, knowing looks screamed exactly what they were thinking. So you're the mother of the CEO's cat? I exhaled a shaky breath. Too soon, because Waffles actually listened to Alaric. The little traitor trotted right out of his office and back into my bedroom. The blue and white British short hair rubbed against my ankle, staring up at me with massive innocent eyes. My brain flatlined. Then survival instincts kicked in. Do not let him back into the frame. If he showed up again, I'd have to fake my own death and flee the country. I was just nudging him away with my foot when Alaric's voice cut through the silence, casually oblivious. Where did your cat go? I forced a stiff smile at the camera. He went to sleep somewhere else. He replied perfectly. Deadpan looks a lot like mine. One single sentence. That was all it took to clear the suffocating tension in the virtual room. Connor recovered first. He cleared his throat. So Alaric, should I pick up where I left off? Alaric leaned back in his leather chair, resuming his usual commanding posture. Continue. Waffles didn't crash the frame again. For the rest of the meeting, he just camped by my feet, switching between napping and batting at my socks. My stomach stayed in knots until the very last second. The second the camera turned off, I slumped against my desk. My shirt clung to my sweat-drenched back. I glared down at the oblivious furball and flicked him gently between the ears. You are definitely not sleeping in my room tonight. After a quick shower, I scooped Waffles up to return him to his designated bedroom, which was legitimately bigger than mine. The second I pulled my door open, I nearly collided with Alaric in the hallway. He had clearly just showered too. His dark hair was still damp. A few stray water droplets slid down his sharp jawline, disappearing into the collar of his shirt, faintly highlighting the hard-carved lines of his chest. Casually dried his hair with a towel, but his deep, predatory gaze felt like a physical weight. As it dragged over the thin neckline of my pajamas, I could literally see his Adam's apple bob as he swallowed. The temperature in the narrow hallway spiked thick with a dangerous, suffocating heat. I bit the inside of my cheek, shifting my weight. He seemed off balance too. He lifted his glass of water, downing it. In seconds, reality crashed back in. I had almost ruined my day job, but I had definitely failed my night job. I'm so sorry, Alaric. I rushed out. I didn't watch him close enough tonight. He paused, his grip tightening slightly on the empty glass. Fine, I take the blame for that one. Before I could overthink it, he added, it was just a slip of the tongue. Don't read into it. He was talking about the go find your mommy comment. I shook my head. I didn't. The whole mom thing started the day I signed my moonlighting contract. Aside from Alaric, his lawyer, and me, there was a pet behaviorist present. She was there to evaluate Waffles' psychological state. Simply put, Alaric wanted to fix Waffles, stop the howling, stop the scratching, and turn him into a docile, manageable pet. That impossible burden fell on my shoulders. But the bonus structure was insane. The behaviorist gave me a very serious look that day. He's been lacking care and living in an environment without security. That breeds behavioral issues. It's fixable. Smother him in maternal love. Eventually he'll understand the effort you and Alaric are putting in. I was 90% sure Alaric had tuned out everything except the phrase maternal love. As from that day on, he casually labeled me as Waffles' mother. Whenever the cat interrupted his work, he just pat his rear in order. Go find your mommy. The only saving grace was that Alaric hadn't started referring to himself as the dad, because if he did, the dynamics in this penthouse were going to get way too complicated. The morning after the video conference, Connor called me into his office. The second I walked in for the first time ever, my mentor looked deeply uncomfortable. He shifted in his seat. Last night. That cat, you and Alaric. Are you guys? I cut him off with a forced laugh. Crazy, right? I had no idea my cat looked exactly like the CEO's. Really? Not the same cat. He let out a dry laugh of his own. Half the department has been hounding me all morning, asking what it's like to have the boss's secret wife as my assistant. I'm not his wife, I said flatly. Alaric said it himself. They just look alike. Thank God. Connor exhaled a heavy breath, but a second later his eyes narrowed suspiciously. Swear to me, mentor to assistant. Is there really nothing going on between you and Alaric? Absolutely nothing. He still looks like he didn't buy it. I threw my hands up. Please do your assistant a favor and kill the rumor. The CEO's wife is way too heavy of a crown for me. It'll snap my neck. He finally nodded. I walked out of his office, the knot in my stomach finally untying. The rest of the workday was blissfully boring. On the subway ride home, my phone buzzed. Text from my cousin. Why haven't you been taking any sitting jobs lately? My cousin was the founder of the pet sitting app, taking a few jobs used to help me distress. And over time, I had built up a solid list of regulars who specifically requested me. Alaric used to be one of them. A thought suddenly slammed into my brain. Wait, Alaric's penthouse was rigged with security cameras. Did he see me on those cameras during my previous visits? If he knew exactly who I was and still specifically requested me, wasn't that highly suspicious? He just waiting to catch me red-handed, violating company policy, so he could blackmail me into being his living nanny. My phone buzzed again with more text from my cousin. I decided to just dump the whole situation on her. I typed out a quick summary. What do you think is going on here? I asked. Reply was instantaneous. Are you actually this dense? Your boss is clearly into you. My thumbs flew across the screen. You are insane. Radio silence. The silence dragged on for way too long. I sent a question mark. He replied. Just trying to figure out. Which side of the family gave you negative brain cells? I rolled my eyes. He has someone else. The cat is the physical proof I had to do this. After living in Alaric's penthouse for a while, the guy clearly wasn't a cat person. But Waffles got the absolute best of everything. The cat's bedroom was bigger than mine, fully furnished with top-tier equipment, and featured a massive framed portrait of the cat on the wall. If it wasn't the beloved pet of some woman he was madly in love with, why would a ruthless billionaire go through all that trouble to please a cat? More silence from my cousin. I hit her with another question mark. He typed back, just Googled your boss. He's hot and loaded. If you like him, go for it. I approve. I let out a heavy sigh. But seriously, take a few shifts when you have time. She added, stepping back from the ledge. At least help me train the newbies. I rubbed my temples. Fine. Surprisingly, when I brought up taking a gig on the app with Alaric, he agreed without hesitation. He even played the confident boss. Leave Waffles to me, don't worry. Relieved, I went off to train a newbie for my cousin. I took the trainee to the client's place, drilled him on memorizing client preferences, and hammered in the app's strict guidelines. He hustled the entire afternoon. Right in the middle of a heavy de-shedding session, my phone buzzed. It was Alaric. For the first time ever, his perfectly controlled baritone cracked with actual panic. How much longer do you need? An hour maybe? What's wrong? He won't stop howling. He kept it brutally brief. The line went quiet on his end. Sure enough, Waffles. His dramatic ear-piercing wails echoed through the speaker. Grab his favorite freeze-dried treats. Construct it or try pulling him onto your lap and rubbing his belly. He scratched me. The billionaire CEO sounded utterly defeated. I stared at the wall for a second. I turned to the trainee. Can you handle the rest? He nodded. Great emergency. I gotta run. When I rushed into the penthouse, man and beast had resumed their fragile truce. But Alaric next sported two very fresh, angry red scratches. I bit my lip hard to stop a smile. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have taken the shift. My contract explicitly stated I needed to be on call for Waffles. Plus Alaric was paying me an obscene amount above market rate. Taking outside jobs was pushing it. Alaric waved it off. It was my fault. He yanked at his tie, loosening the silk knot. He stepped into my space, planting his muscular forearm, scratches fully visible, against the wall. The move pinned me in the corner. His dark eyes dropped to my lips, burning with an undeniable mix of danger and frustration. I endured that little beast temper for you. How exactly are you going to make it up to me? The space between us felt impossibly narrow. Alaric's forearm rested against the wall right above my shoulder, the fine dark hairs on his skin brushed by the soft light of the entryway. The two fresh red scratches on his forearm were raised and angry, contrasting sharply with his smooth skin. He smelled of rain, cedar, and the sharp, clean metallic tang of his expensive cologne. Alaric. I breathed, my back pressed flat against the drywall. You're bleeding. We need to put some antiseptic on that. His dark eyes didn't waver. They remained fixed on my lips, dark and heavy with a quiet, concentrated intensity that made my heart hammer against my ribs like a trapped bird. I don't care about the scratches, Josie, he murmured, his voice dropping into that low, gravelly register that usually made roomfuls of directors go completely silent. I care about the fact that I spent the last 45 minutes chasing a 4-pound ball of blue fur under my Italian leather sofa, while he screamed like a banshee. My neighbors probably think I'm running a black market organ trade. I bit my lip hard, trying desperately to suppress the laugh that was threatening to bubble up. Waffles is sensitive to change. I told you he has abandonment issues. He has psychological warfare issues, Alaric grumbled, but the tension in his shoulders slowly began to ease. He didn't pull his arm down though. He remained hovering over me, his chest rising and falling in a steady, heavy rhythm that kept the temperature in the corner of the hallway suffocatingly warm. I'm sorry, I said, my voice softening as I looked up at him. I really shouldn't have taken the shift. It was unprofessional of me, especially since you're paying me so far above the market rate. Alaric stared at me for a long, quiet moment. The predatory sharpness in his gaze slowly faded, replaced by something weary and unexpectedly gentle. I don't care about the contract, Josie, he said softly, his arm finally dropping to his side. He stepped back, giving me room to breathe, though the lingering warmth of his presence remained. I don't like coming home to an empty penthouse anymore. He turned and walked toward the kitchen, his shoulders slightly hunched, leaving me standing in the corner of the hallway with my breath caught in my throat. I stood there for a second, my mind racing. I don't like coming home to an empty penthouse anymore. The words echoed in my head, sweet and terrifyingly loaded. I shook my head, trying to clear the sudden, dizzying warmth that had settled in my chest. Alaric, I called out, walking into the kitchen. Where's the first aid kit? Alaric sat on a stool by the marble kitchen island, his silk shirt unbuttoned at the cuffs, his sleeves rolled up to his elbows. He was quietly scrolling through his tablet with his left hand while I knelt beside his right arm, a cotton pad soaked in stinging antiseptic in my hand. This might sting, I warned, looking up at him. Just do it, he muttered, not looking up from his screen. I pressed the cotton pad gently against the fresh scratches on his forearm. Didn't flinch, but I felt the muscles in his arm instantly go rigid under my touch. His forearms were lean and corded, the skin warm and slightly rough. Why do you keep him, Alaric? I asked quietly, my fingers carefully holding his wrist as I dabbed at the blood. He clearly hates you. And, well, you don't really seem like a cat person. Alaric's hand paused on the screen of his tablet. He didn't answer immediately. He slowly lowered the device onto the counter, his gaze drifting toward the far end of the living room, where the massive, gold-framed portrait of Waffles hung on the dark accent wall. He wasn't my cat, Alaric said, his voice quiet and devoid of its usual commanding edge. He belonged to my mother. I froze, the cotton pad hovering over his skin. She passed away last year, Alaric continued, his eyes fixed on the portrait. Waffles was the only thing she had left. When she was in the hospice, she spent her final weeks worrying about what would happen to him. She knew he was difficult. She knew he was aggressive. She was terrified that if he went to a shelter, they would put him down. He turned his head to look at me, his dark eyes filled with a raw, quiet vulnerability that I had never seen on his face before. I promised her I would take care of him, he said softly. But I didn't know how. I don't know how to connect with things that are small and fragile, Josie. Every time I tried to pet him, he scratched me. Every time I tried to feed him, he hissed. I built the cat room. I bought the best toys. I hired the best behaviorists, but nothing worked. He reached out, his long fingers gently touching the back of my hand, the warmth of his skin sending a sudden, electric shiver up my arm. Until you showed up, he said. The first time you came to sit for him, Waffles didn't hide under the bed. He slept on your lap. When I saw the security footage that night, I realized that you had the one thing I couldn't buy for him. Maternal love. I whispered, the word suddenly carrying a weight that made my chest ache. Warmth, Alaric corrected gently, his thumb lightly brushing the back of my wrist. You brought warmth into this place, Josie. Not just for Waffles. My breath caught in my throat. The clinical smell of the antiseptic in the air was suddenly completely replaced by the scent of him, and for the first time, I realized that the blackmail contract wasn't a punishment at all. It was a bridge. The next morning, the project department at the corporate headquarters was in a state of high alert. The annual charity gala was only 3 days away, and our department was responsible for presenting the new green energy proposal to the board of trustees. Everyone was working double time, running between the printer and the presentation boards, their faces pale with exhaustion. I was sitting at my desk, organizing the project folders, when Connor walked over, holding a thick stack of printed briefs. "Josie," Connor said, his voice unusually quiet as he leaned against my desk. "Divider. The board of directors just finalized the seating chart for the gala." "Oh." I looked up, rubbing my temples. "Did we get a decent table?" "We did," Connor said, his eyes narrowing slightly as he looked at me with a mixture of suspicion and deep amusement. "But you didn't." I frowned. "What do you mean?" "Your name isn't on the project department's table list, Josie," Connor said, pulling a sheet of paper from his brief and sliding it across my desk. "You've been assigned to table 1, the president's table." My jaw dropped. I stared at the paper. There, right next to the name Alaric Vance, CEO, was my name, Josie Carter, project assistant. "Connor, this has to be a mistake," I stammered, my face turning a bright, violent red as I felt the eyes of 3 nearby co-workers instantly snap to my desk. "I'm just a junior assistant. I shouldn't even be at the main hall, let alone at table 1. I tried to tell the HR director that. Connor sighed, though his lips were twitching with a hidden smirk. "But she said the instruction came directly from the CEO's office. She said, and I quote, Ms. Carter's presence at the main table is required for diplomatic reasons." "Diplomatic reasons?" I groaned, burying my face in my hands. "What does that even mean? Is Waffles attending the gala as a foreign dignitary?" "I don't know, Josie," Connor laughed, patting my shoulder as he walked away. "But you'd better find a very nice dress. Half the board of trustees is going to be watching you to see if the secret wife rumor is actually true." I sat at my desk, my mind spinning. I pulled out my phone and quickly typed a message to Alaric. "Are you insane? Why am I at table 1? The entire department is staring at me like I'm a gold digger." The reply came almost instantly, perfectly deadpan. "Waffles requested your presence. He says he doesn't trust me to represent the family alone." I stared at the screen, my heart beating with a sudden, frantic rhythm that had nothing to do with the office gossip. "I don't have a dress for table 1, Alaric. A courier is arriving at the penthouse at 6 p.m. Don't worry about the dress, Josie. Just be ready." The grand ballroom of the Plaza Hotel was a sea of crystal chandeliers, gold leaf, and high-end champagne. When I walked through the double doors, the low hum of the orchestra was completely drowned out by the sudden, suffocating weight of 100 pairs of eyes turning to look at me. The dress Alaric's courier had delivered was a masterpiece of midnight blue silk, its neckline elegant and draped, the back dropping into a soft, low curve that revealed the clean lines of my shoulders. It was simple, expensive, and fit me so perfectly it felt like a second skin. Alaric was already standing near the main table, talking to a group of foreign investors. He wore a dark, custom-made tuxedo that made his towering frame look even more intimidatingly handsome. His hair was styled back, his dark eyes sharp and commanding as he navigated the conversation. But the moment he saw me walk through the doors, his voice faltered mid-sentence. He excused himself from the investors, ignoring their curious looks, and walked slowly toward me. "Josie," he said, his voice dropping to that low, gravelly whisper as he stopped a few inches from me. His gaze dragged over the dark blue silk of my dress, his eyes burning with an intensity that made my knees feel weak. "You look incredible, Alaric," I whispered, my hand reaching out to touch his sleeve to keep my balance. "The entire room is watching us." "Let them watch," he said, his hand sliding naturally around my waist, his warm palm pressing against the bare skin of my back, through the low curve of the dress. The temperature of his skin sent a sudden, electric shock straight to my core. "I've spent the last 6 months hiding you in my penthouse, Josie. I think it's time the company knows who really runs my life." He led me toward table 1, his hand never leaving my back. The 2 department heads who had made my life hell during my internship were sitting at the adjacent table. The moment they saw Alaric guide me to the seat next to his, their faces went completely pale. They quickly looked down at their plates, their hands trembling as they picked up their wine glasses. I couldn't help but smile, a quiet, satisfying sense of triumph washing over me. "See," Alaric whispered into my ear, his breath warm against my neck as he pulled out my chair. "I told you. The crown isn't that heavy, Josie. It fits you perfectly." The gala was in full swing when Alaric quietly took my hand under the table, his fingers warm and rough as they intertwined with mine. "Come with me," he whispered. He led me out of the crowded ballroom, through the quiet, carpeted corridors, and onto a private, stone balcony that overlooked the glittering skyline of the city. The cool night air was a welcome relief from the suffocating heat of the ballroom, the wind ruffling the hem of my silk dress. I leaned against the stone railing, looking out at the sea of neon lights. Alaric stepped beside me, his hands resting on the stone, his eyes fixed on my face. "Josie," he said softly, Do you want to know the truth about how I found you on the app? I turned my head to look at him, my brow furrowing. What do you mean? The penthouse has security cameras, Alaric said, a faint, self-deprecating smile touching his lips. The first time you came to sit for waffles, I was on a business trip in London. I was bored, so I opened the app's feed to check on him. I expected to see him scratching the walls or howling. He took a step closer, his towering frame blocking the cool wind, his dark eyes searching mine. But instead I saw a girl in oversized pajamas, sitting on my living room rug, feeding Waffles pieces of chicken from her hand while singing some ridiculous, out-of-tune song to him. Waffles was purring so loudly the microphone on the camera was buzzing. My face went completely hot. You saw that? I watched that video 30 times that night, Josie, Alaric whispered, his hand reaching out to gently tuck a stray strand of hair behind my ear. His touch was warm, lingering on the soft skin of my cheek. I didn't hire you because I wanted to blackmail you into being a nanny. I hired you because I had spent 3 months trying to find an excuse to meet the girl on the camera. My breath caught in my throat. The quiet, constant doubt that had been lingering in my mind for the past few weeks, the fear that I was just a convenient tool for his cat, instantly evaporated. Alaric, I whispered, my hands reaching out to clutch the lapels of his tuxedo. I don't want you to be Waffles' mother anymore, Josie, he murmured, his face slowly lowering toward mine, his dark eyes burning with an undeniable, heavy attraction. I want you to be my wife. A real one. No rumors. No contracts. He leaned down, and before I could even find the breath to answer, his lips met mine. The kiss was slow, warm, and filled with a quiet, concentrated intensity that made my mind go completely blank. The scent of cedar and high-end cologne wrapped around me, and as his arms tightened around my waist, pulling me tightly against his chest, I realized that my cousin had been completely wrong about one thing. The crown of the CEO's wife wasn't heavy at all. It felt as light and as warm as a summer breeze. 6 months later, the living room of the penthouse was quiet, the warm afternoon sun casting long, golden stripes of light across the plush rug. A massive, gold-framed portrait of Waffles still hung on the dark accent wall, but beside it, there was now a new, slightly smaller frame. It was a photograph of the three of us, Alaric, me, and Waffles, who was looking surprisingly docile and content in my arms. I sat on the sofa, a book in my lap, while Waffles lay curled against my thigh, his soft blue fur rising and falling with a steady, quiet purr. The front door clicked open. Waffles didn't jump or run under the bed. He slowly lifted his head, let out a soft, lazy meow, and went right back to sleep. Alaric walked into the living room, his tie already loosened, his dark hair slightly messy from the wind outside. He looked tired from a long day of board meetings, but the moment his eyes landed on us, the cold, stern mask he usually wore completely melted. He walked over, kneeling beside the sofa. He reached out, his long fingers gently massaging the back of Waffles' neck, before his hand slid up to cup my cheek, his thumb lightly brushing my lip. How was your day, Mommy? He murmured, a soft, rare grin spreading across his handsome face. I laughed, leaning down to press a soft kiss against his lips. We missed you, Daddy, I whispered, the word no longer carrying any complicated, awkward dynamics, but representing the quiet, absolute warmth of our real family. Waffles let out a loud, satisfied purr, batting lazily at Alaric's cufflink, and, for the first time in his life, he didn't scratch